Welcome to Bleeding Purple, where we take a walk down memory lane with the special key stakeholders in the history of the Fremantle Football Club. Hi, I'm Dr Jeff Boyle, and as this will be our last podcast for season 2009, I've invited two absolute legends from the inaugural player squad in 1995. Please welcome Mr Shaun John McManus and Mr Matthew Spider Burton. Welcome, gentlemen.
What about Spider's middle name?
I couldn't find it, mate, to be honest.
Spider?
Thomas.
Yeah,
Thomas.
that's right.
Thomas.
Yeah.
It was probably there. I just didn't do my homework.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shaun, for getting us off.
Most
to the
people don't
start.
know my first name, let alone my second name.
I did get the strong feeling about this podcast that I'm not going to get too many questions in, but can I start off with one little thing for you? I've had this framed photograph in my office for near on 25 years, right?
Yeah.
And you know it well because I reckon you've walked into my office. It's a photograph of Spider taking a cracking mark over North Melbourne opposition, and at the base of the crumb is yourself. And obviously you don't get one because he snatches it.
Well, he's got a great set of hands. I've always said that.
Yeah.
And that's probably why he got married to his lovely wife, Jules, because he had a great set of hands,
Yeah.
Jeffrey.
Yeah, that's the only thing I hung on to.
Spide, if I could start with you, my friend, because the whole idea of these podcasts was to celebrate 25 years of the Fremantle Football Club, and being part of that inaugural 95 season must have been special for you because it was your inaugural game. You were there from 95 through to 99 seasons, 70 cracking games of football, the best that we've probably not seen since that time.
It's a great call, Jeff.
32 of the best goals too, I would imagine, to answer for.
Well, if someone would have kicked the ball to him more often, I'm sure it would have been a lot higher. It's very accurate.
Can you lead us through what your thoughts were when you first arrived at the club?
Yeah, for sure, mate. I'd been cut from the Eagles list. I'd had a year back at Subiaco, overlooked from drafts and all that sort of thing. A bit of sibling rivalry. My brother had got signed up. I hadn't. Got invited down to training. First night of training, there's 80 guys there. You know, there's a whole heap of waffle, players similar to myself. And, then there was, Shaun, the crew that had all been signed up. And just one by one, blokes were getting cut, not via the exit interview that they have now, Wiley, but, and sometimes in quite a harsh way, but just, you're out of here and the AFL dream's gone. And, I was still there after Christmas, and then lo and behold, I get signed up. And then all through pre-season, I sort of knew that, the history of that first ever game, and what it was going to hold, for a long time to come. And I'll give you a little snippet and you can put it in your stiff shit file, but Belly and I were the only ones to play every pre-season game that year. And I played awful in the last pre-season game, and I was only 50-50 to get a game, and got a game in that against Richmond. And, it was a real battle for me. I was almost 25, so, it was so... I understood being a pioneer of Fremantle Footy Club and what that was going to mean into the future, but it was also my personal journey there too. So, that pre-season was the hardest thing that I've ever done, and even to this day, it's the hardest thing. It was 6 mornings and 5 nights, and, training was exceptionally hard, long. Jared thought that he had to get a lot of the players up to speed, and... I remember just getting home from training on a Saturday morning and, just fall into bed and you just sleep for 3 to 5 hours. And then the first ever game and running onto the ground at the MCG was just unbelievable. And then, I partook in the first centre bounce against Greg Deere from Richmond. It was about a 50-50. The ball spills to the half-back line after a bit of scrimmage, and Kickety picks it up, and in today's language, I'd run to the fat side on the wing. And I was out there on my own, and so I took the first ever mark. I kicked the ball right to the top of 50, which then meant that I got the first ever message from the runner.
That's so good.
Don't kick it to the top of the 50. Get it deep inside the forward line, please. Probably not that nicely from Tony Solon.
Yes.
So.
Again, one of the great characters, and I'm hoping we can cover some of the characters. Tony Solon. Fantastic. I hope he's listening. Shawnee, if I could then switch to you a little bit, because your seasons were a little bit longer, 14 in total.
Yep.
228 memorable games. I'm going to slip in the 95 goals because they were crackers as well.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty inaccurate, but I should have kicked a ton, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
I think at one stage I was 11th all time. Do you know where I am? I only remember that because Steve Grace, who was an assistant coach with us, he used to mention it to me every single day of the week. It was fabulous times in 95. Can we sort of reflect on some of the playing squad to start with, if we can? If I throw a couple of names at you, I wouldn't mind your thoughts. Winston Abraham. Winston was one of those mercurial guys that you played with, Spide, that was anything can happen at any time. And I remember the year before Fremantle were formed in 1994, there was a bye week for the AFL, and there was a team selected, and Jared Neesham was the coach of it, and it was kind of like a bunch of guys out of the waffle, and we played in the state colours, and Winston was picked out into that team, and I knew nothing about him, and I'd played a little bit of waffle to that stage, and he was just amazing. He went bananas in this game against North Melbourne, and from that point on I knew that he was in Jared's sights, and I knew how talented he was. So to see him then come and play for our team at that time, at the very start, well, you knew something special was going to happen all the time, Spot.
Yeah, he spun me out as soon as he got there.
Yeah, on a previous podcast, of course, Jared indicated that he thinks he's the most skilled player he's ever seen, which I think would still hold true in many ways.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment because at that time, I might jump ahead to some other names, but there was Winston, there was Gary Durkay,
yes.
Scott Chisholm, who another Aboriginal fellow that we had was... he was amazing at times, wasn't he?
Yep.
He was doing the no-look kicks out of full-back spot.
Yeah,
remember
right.
them?
I got a couple
balls
of them.
coming to you.
Yeah, no, he was a genius at that.
And of course, Dale Kickett. Dale was unbelievable. In all my time, I don't think I've ever seen Dale get beaten in a one-on-one. And we were watching some highlights, Spide, weren't we, the other day of us playing St Kilda, which was a throwback. It was on Facebook and stuff like that. And Kickety just dancing around guys and busting a move. But all those guys were just incredible.
Yep, and hard as a cat's head.
Oh, Dale was amazing. As I said, he'd throw his body in there. They never tackled him. He was just strong. And, once again, I never saw him lose a contest at all.
Yeah, well done, Shawnee. You've just cut my grass on about half a dozen people that we were planning to talk on.
I can elaborate a bit more on who.
Yeah,
give me a name.
We'll go through. I'll switch to Spide for a moment. Peter Bell.
It was my roommate for those 8 games, whichever ones we played away, and then played the first game. Didn't say a word. Did not say a word the whole year, and then got cut, and then comes back and he's this, bigger than life ego. You can't jump over, self-promoter. He's unbelievable. I couldn't believe the amount that he'd grown or that his confidence had gone through that period of time. So.
All right, Shawnee, elaborate on Scotty Chisholm for me, because the Prince of Pockets was pretty special.
Yeah, well, he's self-proclaimed Prince of Pockets because he reckons he had a link to the Queen, something along those lines. That's right, Spy?
He was... We believed him.
Yeah, we believed him, we did. It was funny because I played against Scotty when he played for Claremont, and I played for East Fremantle in the grand final. And in that grand final, I clotheslined him. And he's quite an angry guy when you do that to him, Jeff. So at that stage, I probably weighed in at about 63 kilos. So I thought, gee, this is a bit... I've bitten off a bit more than I can chew here. I didn't speak to him. We kind of had a go at each other a little bit after that clothesline. And then the first day we're off to training, I used to pick up Gary Durkay and bring him to training. He said, do you mind if we go and pick someone up? I said, no, not a problem. So we go and pick up Scott Chisholm from Bicton. I'd never met him. And the last moment was me clotheslining him in the Waffle Grand Final in 1994. Straight away jumped in the car and he just said, hey, Bruss, no worries about that game, eh? And I just went, oh, yeah, that's all good. So I got the all clear.
Yes.
But then I didn't realise, playing against him in the Waffle was athletically how brilliant he was. And you'd remember how fast he was. He was the fastest guy you've ever seen.
Yep.
The way he ran off the half-back line, Spide, and just ran and bounced. People would chase him. And then I'd be going full pelt, and all of a sudden he'd just find another 2 or 3 gears, and he'd just be doing it for fun.
Yeah. How long was his leg rope?
Oh, unbelievable. He never played on anyone. But I don't think he never had to back then because he zoned off and read the play, and off he went, running down the field and bouncing the ball. And off he went. He actually was one of those guys playing, because it's quite stressful for all of us playing, but he was one of those guys who you can imagine it was just good fun the whole time.
Yes, and a magnificent smile.
Yeah, he had a great smile, Scotty. And I tell you what, it was hard to keep him in at night, though, over the weekends. So you'd play a game on a Saturday or Sunday, which meant he'd be out on a Friday or Saturday night, depending on when we played the night before, just to make sure that, he was in the rhythm.
Exactly. All right, Spider, I'm going to switch back to you. Stephen O'Reilly.
Otis had a pretty good career at that stage at Geelong, so coming home for him was... it'd be fair to say it was a bit of a culture shock at first. So,
yep.
He was just a champion. Just the way that he got all the gun full forwards at that time. There was just a whole plethora of them. But when Plugger goes to him, if you run off me one more time, I'm going to kill you. And then he runs off him one more time and comes back, and Plugger pulls the jumper over his head, So he and Plugger had form. So
yes, I remember that vividly because I had to run out to him. That was at the Wacker, and Plugger had got him in a headlock, and that was poor old Otis wasn't. He wasn't breathing much by the time I got out to him.
He was amazing, Stephen. I think I don't know in the record books this will get brought up, but Plugger kicked his 1,000th goal at the SCG against Otis. And Gary Ablett kicked his 1,000th goal against Otis at Geelong. Both those times, he beat those guys on the day, but they happened to kick those goals.
Yes.
And when you mentioned those full forward spot, there was Dunstall, Lockett. In the end, there was Lowe and Richardson, Gary Ablett. We've never seen full forwards like that. I know the game's changed and all that, but we've never seen those likes of those players. And he played on all of them. And he used to have running shots on goal. He'd be off just running down the field, bouncing. Typical Freo style at the time, eh?
Yeah, it was.